Well, hello and welcome to CDO Magazine's interview series. My name is Clyde Gillard from HPE. I'm the AI go-to-market leader for North America. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with Arvind Balasundaram, Executive Director, Commercial Insights and Analytics at Regeneron Pharmaceuticals. This just happened last week. So I was at Boston Logan Airport. I live in the Boston area, not like New York or whatever's behind you there. And I was surprised. There was a billboard as I went by, and the billboard said, "Don't hire humans, hire agents." And I'll leave the name of the company off of this, right? But I want to bring us sort of like future looking questions. You know, you call them AI forward looking companies or forward companies. So that's an in your face kind of statement, right? You know, don't hire humans, hire agents. But I'm just curious, if you look at AI, generative AI, agentic AI, it's not about replacing humans. It's about replacing human judgment, but augmenting it, right? Bringing the AI in to augment the human judgment component. And I think you were quoted saying that somewhere in some of my reading. And so I'm curious, when you hear that, can you comment on that? Because AI isn't there to replace people wholesale. It's there to give you more tools to work with. And I just wonder if you could react to that billboard I saw.
It's a very interesting caption, right? Especially in this climate with how people are relating to AI and the fears of it. But, this is a great question, Clyde, right? Because this is another one of those that is evolving, right? And so if you go back in history, right, and you look at technology, and I don't know, you probably have read, Daniel Susskind. He's done a lot of work in the area of technology and jobs, right, and perception. And he's done some excellent work, right? And he talks about, what is called the substituting force and the complementing force, right? So whenever we've had technological changes, even point of inflection changes, what you see often is there's a substituting force because some jobs go away. But then there's a complementing force because the technology needs kind of some other jobs that are created that need to augment it. Now, I'm going to ask you to hold on to that analogy because that itself is changing, right? But will we see that? Probably. We're already seeing it with generative AI. You take the simple idea of all of the jobs that were technically software driven or ML ops driven, they're all going to morph into more of an AI integration driven, right? Because as agents come in, now you're talking about, goal directed complexity of multiple tasks and coordinating it. So, and it's going to affect even people like me in insights analytics, right? If we have an agent that is a forecasting agent, that forecasting agent can probably align on a decision with a supply chain agent instantaneously, which would take me months, maybe weeks to align with somebody who's a human, right? So it might completely change functions as we know them in companies, right? And it's not a bad thing. Now, does that mean jobs will go away? Probably not. It as you said, I think there will always be a need to augment. But one of I told you to hold on to that thought on substitution and complementing. One of the things we are seeing, though, and I see a lot of this sometimes in conversations I'm in, we have a tendency to kind of look at agents and assume AI in general, agents in particular, are going to work just like us, right? And there's increasing evidence that machines actually think differently, right? And we saw this actually when you go back when, the world's best Go player, Lee Sedol, was beaten. The move the machine made was a move that I think the second move was a move that many generations of Go players basically had written as an edict you never play, right? And that was kind of a very early proof that machines sometimes don't work the way we think, and yet the machine beat the world's best player, right? So the same thing we heard about, hey, creativity is never going to go. And I don't think it will. There are many dimensions to creativity. But we've had robots compose music that in a blind sitting, people thought Bach composed that. So, and nothing, there was no, particular instructions given to it. It just produced it, right? So very recently, I just read an article, maybe last week, that agents are getting very good at lying. When you put a deliberate constraint in the code for them to, restrict their activities, they evade it, right? So we are learning things about machines that, hey, maybe just the way evolution worked, maybe machines can work. So the reason I bring this up is I think the formula forward is always, yes, we will need humans in the loop, but we also have to be savvy that machines think differently than us. They use different processes than us, that we shouldn't always approach our jobs and functions as if machines would do it the same way. They might end up doing it far more efficiently and effectively. And I say that as somebody who works in data, who is completely overwhelmed with my structured input. And now I have 80% unstructured input. Will a machine actually be able to collate all that faster than me? Yes. Right. So to some degree, I think a few of us would say you have to be prepared to kill your own function.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to be smarter about what human dimensions it's going to require to get it to judgment, to help it become a decision, to govern the oversight. How do you control what is the balance between control and autonomy in an agent? These are dimensions that will present opportunities, but one has to be flexible in their approach.
Yeah, when I present, I do tell people AI will lie to you with the utmost certainty because it doesn't know typically that it's lying. It just takes its best guess and says, this is it. So you actually need the human in the loop in certain cases just to validate that, right?
Yes.
And so I guess my last question, to get us a little bit away from Skynet and Terminator and, some of these concepts, right? Let me wrap up with sort of a carry forward from that future. So many organizations are in the process of implementing or adopting AI solutions for their business. And I'm just curious, where do you see us as a society or us as a business going with AI? AI-based technologies can make the greatest difference where? In our industry or in society? I'm just kind of curious to have your sort of view from the mountain, looking over and saying 3 to 4 years, where do you think AI will bring us?
Yes, so I always start most conversations, and I'll end this conversation with that by telling you I'm a guarded optimist on AI, right? And the guarded is as important as the optimism, because I actually think you do need optimism in AI. We have a lot of pessimism. There's a lot of talk on hallucinations and risks, and and that's true. With the appropriate oversight, though, there are a lot of benefits, right? And I work in healthcare. We've had some amazing advances because of AI. We know how, protein folding, could drug development be expedited because of AI? Possibly. We do a lot of our drug submissions kind of using, documents and statistical programs and things like that. Could all of that be expedited with AI? Possibly. In the end, does that mean new products and new developments come to benefit a patient sooner? Yes. And if the answer is yes, as someone who works in a company that is for patients, I am optimistic about AI, right? With the appropriate controls, right? So will there be some bad things? Oh, absolutely. There are many dimensions to where AI can go. We just talked about some of them. So, you want to do it in a very regimented way in which you involve appropriate registries, appropriate oversight, governance, always in consult with your legal and compliance folks. So you're not compromising, either the enterprise or the patients in your endeavor to kind of bring them good things, right? But as a practitioner, I want to end with a call to the community of practitioners that, when the tone gets overly negative, they should always come back to, humans also have limitations, right? And as someone who is in the business of data, like yourself and like most folks in the CDO community, we will need help to augment our ability to construct hypotheses, to, get into multimodal analytics, to connect into knowledge graphs, and be able to look at, complex data and those interactions. And I don't think guarded development and advancing of some of these AI features is a bad thing,
Mhm.
right? So that's kind of where I am. Always on the watch out for risks, but when I think it's prudent, I try to recommend that, hey, we might want to wade in and see where it goes. And luckily I work for an innovative enterprise, and that is for patient good. So I think we'll end up in a good place.
Well, guarded optimism seems like a good way to just go through life anyway. So I'll certainly say that. Um, Arvid, let me thank you for joining me today. I feel like we could talk for another hour, but fascinating topics. I very much appreciate it. And for our listeners, for more interview information and insights, please visit cdomagazine.tech. Thank you.
Clyde, thank you very much. And again, thanks to CDO Magazine. I hope to see you in New York, where we will use guarded optimism to cross our streets. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers. Thank you.